So last week, we explored pitch, or how high or low a sound or a note is. This week, we've been talking about how a pair of pitches can form an interval, and that intervals have color, flavor, tone, and even motion. For example, sometimes the pitches in an interval are very close together. This makes an interval that sounds just like a short step. Other times, the pitches in an interval can be far apart. This makes an interval that sounds more like a leap or a jump. Just like us, some pitches like each other a lot, while others don't like each other very much at all. When we combine pitches that like being together, they tend to make a happier or more consonant sound. When pitches that aren't friends are combined, that makes an interval that is crunchy or dissonant. When combined themselves, intervals with different colors and flavors can tell a larger story. And do you know, we're not the only ones who do this. Lots of animals also combine pitches to make intervals, and they even use the same intervals we do to communicate many kinds of things with each other, from welcomes to warnings. Here to tell us more is our friend Lucas Marin from the Hood Canal Salmon Center.
Hello everybody, this is Lucas again from the Salmon Center. I hope you're all doing well, and unfortunately I have to film my video inside today because we seem to be having a crazy wind event. But I'm here to talk about birds, specifically bird song in the estuary. First, we need to figure out what an estuary is. An estuary is where fresh water meets salt water, so where a river runs into the ocean. But it's a little more complicated than that, and a little bit cooler too. An estuary is a place that we call an edge habitat. It makes edge habitat as that connection between freshwater and saltwater. An edge habitat is always good for birds, fish, or other wildlife. And it's a good place to see other wildlife too. Edge habitat can be anything like the edge of a forest where it connects to a grassland, the edge of the mountain range where it connects to the forest, or like I said, the edge of freshwater river when it runs into saltwater. The estuary that we have here at the Salmon Center, across from the Salmon Center, is the Union River Estuary, and it was restored in 2013. This estuary, almost 10 years later, is now showing way more birds using the estuary as that restored edge habitat compared to when it was a farm field. So when there was nothing but grass out there, half the amount of birds used it today when it's full of water and other native shrubs. So that goes to show that estuary and restored estuary edge habitat is where animals really like to be. So that makes it a really good place to hear some bird calls. Now, birds have all sorts of different vocalizations. So let's talk about these calls or songs. So those are the two types of bird vocalizations, songs and calls. Songs are used in a few different ways. One, to defend their territory, or two, usually to attract a mate. So songs are usually what you hear out in the woods. They're what sound more melodic and harmonic. They use them to defend their territory just by projecting that out. Other birds hear that and either go to take that territory or understand, hey, that bird is over there, I'm not going to go bother him. Some of these songs are crazier than others. One example that I want to show you is the song of the Pacific Wren. Now this song is so insane, I love hearing it out in the woods, and you probably have too. It's so insane that scientists actually have to slow it down to understand every note that they use. Another great one is the hermit thrush. It's very harmonic, very beautiful, and has actually been studied for how perfectly harmonic it is. One interesting thing about songs, though, is that they can actually change with the generations of birds that sing them. So songs are learned by males. So when a juvenile bird grows up, it hears other males make that song. And so through that variation and through teaching and hearing it, other birds change the melody and the harmony of that song just a little bit and a lot over time. The other part of vocalization that birds do is their calls. So they have a few different types of calls. One of the most common, I would say, that I notice is the alarm call. So this is like when you're walking through the forest or walking through a natural area and you hear a bunch of crows cawing because you're there. Or maybe you see a bunch of crows cawing because there's a red-tailed hawk in the area. Even like robins will do it when you walk by where there's a bunch of robins. So they call because they want to warn their friends, hey, this person's here, or this thing's here, this animal's here, let's get out of here. It's kind of like an alarm on your house. Another interesting call that you might hear is the group or flock call. So this is the call that you hear when there's a big group of birds that they're trying to stick together. So you might hear that this winter when chickadees and nuthatches and other small kinglets and stuff hang out together. They make these big flocks. They go from tree to tree. They scavenge all the berries they can. And they're always chirping, just these little chirps to remind each other, hey, I'm over here and you're over there. Don't forget me. Don't leave without me. So those are really cute little chips and chirps. And then you also get flight calls. So the flight calls and the group calls kind of similar, but flight calls are usually just to warn other birds that they're flying over, and those they use to migrate. They use while they migrate, so they use them mostly at night. So a lot of birds migrate at nighttime. They fly in the dark, so they have to use their flight calls to keep together. Similar to the group calls, but for a different purpose. So you might think of when Canada geese fly over and they're all honking at each other. That's a good example of the flight call. But birds calls can tell you a lot of different things. So next time you're out in the forest, keep your ears open and try and pick out some new calls. If you really want to get into bird calls, don't forget to check out the Merlin Bird ID app, MERLIN. It's a great app that I use on my phone all the time. You can play calls, you can identify birds. Download it, check it out. Have a good day.